Our dark gods smile on us, Imperials. Can you say the same? The Mammoth Monster Mash is out in force as the barbarian tribes of Norsca march upon the soft southern realms. When you want to coat the battlefield with a layer of strawberry jam, like your favorite toaster strudel, accept no substitute. Mumakil are the answer, and we've got two of them. Going up against the Empire of Sigmar with an Archlector at the helm, but this is not your standard Imperial army. They're not just trying to contest the melee grind, they're trying to outright win it with veteran greatswords and Knights of the Blazing Sun. Channeling the Holy Roman Empire hard in this one, Flambears, Zweihanders, and aggressive knight play in burnished black and gold. If the HRE weren't your favorite Christian faction in Medieval 2, you're wrong. Can't say no to the Forlorn Hope. And speaking of Forlorn, my god, there's even a war wagon. So I wanted to crush some souls in this match. Best way to do that is to reenact the Pelennor fields. Get two angry war mammoths and ride down your enemies till they're paced. Wulfric the Wanderer and the Soulcrusher ROR with its massive ward save ability. That is a lot of health to cut through, and a lot of DPS against infantry and cav alike. Backed up by the Dogs of War, Beasts of Tashnar, Ice Wolves, and Skin Wolves. Front line is nothing fancy, mix of Marauders, Champions, and Berserkers with a Shadows Balefy. Now, there are some mind games at play here, because some Empire players like to go heavy on the Greatswords to contest the melee fight, and that's where Mammoths can thrive. But the Empire knows that, so with a more traditional ranged focus build, it's a great way to get half your army torn up by cannons and huntsmen and handguns. There's always inherent risk in going double Mammoth. They're just a juicy target with that fat hitbox, and they're really expensive, but it's fun, and it can be overwhelming in the right scenario. So for the Empire build, there's an Empire Captain on the front ranks buffing up those greatswords, an Archlector behind with Benediction and all the buffs he brings to the table, Veteran Spearmen in the back, Knights of the Blazing Sun on the flank, and this monstrosity, the War Wagon, by far the most overpowered unit in Total War Warhammer 2. It's kind of a meme at this point, like it's really, really trash a lot of the time. There's even a Jade Wizard actually on a Pegasus with Dwellers Below, not a spell you see every day. But yeah, we'll see how that War Wagon pays off, if it'll pay some dividends this battle or if it's going to be completely useless like people expect from it. Now from the start of the match, I'd say might have gone a little bit overkill on the infantry killing potential the Empire have. They have 3 greatswords that are vetted up to silver chevrons. They have the grenade launchers, which are super good for killing infantry as well, but I'm not sure they're really that required when you've got 2 Knights of the Blazing Sun and 3 greatswords buffed up by an Empire Captain in those front ranks. He's going to try to get aggressive with the Knights of the Blazing Sun, try to get some charges up the center early. Milk Mystifying Miasma will slow them down, and we're going to try to bait out a charge. Now this can get scary. Knights of the Blazing Sun have 78 charge bonus, which means they will decimate Skin Wolves and Hounds off of the charge, but if they don't get their charge, then we can kind of whittle them down pretty easily. And some attacks into their rear, slow them down, give them that Frostbite mechanic, get the bonus for Slurge of the Beasts of Tashnar on top, and yeah, they're going to take some damage for sure. Wulfric and the Soulcrusher can push forward because there's very little ranged firepower on the other side of the field. Like I said, they're trying to contest the infantry grind, trying to win that outright, and that means that they don't have a ton of stuff that's super good for killing Mammoths. So I'm saying, okay, well this just looks juicy, right? I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna run over the great swords, and it'll be an easy win. Maybe not. Knights of the Blazing Sun are a hard counter to the majority of my mobility, and then when the Mammoths are isolated, they can get 10,000 BC. Melkos Mystifying Miasma going down on the Knights of Myrmidia, and a huge charge coming in from Wulfric on top of that Oliphant. Oliphant's Mr. Frodo, decimating these great swords in the front ranks, and I think Wulfric should have a whale of a time with Seafang and the huge bonus for infantry and armor piercing he can send the way of those great swords. Everything else, the Marauder Champions, the Marauders, they won't be able to beat up on greatswords particularly easily. In fact, off the charge, greatswords are going to destroy Marauder Champions, take them down to about 2/3 HP pretty soon off impact. Now, there's a couple ways to mitigate that issue. One of them is to just rip a Seafang right through their flank. That's going to do a lot of damage. Normally better versus lower armor stuff, but greatswords aren't the tankiest troops in the world, and take a look at their HP bar plummet as that Seafang rips through, and 2 greatswords already down to half HP. Benediction and the rest of the buffs from that Archlector maybe a little bit slow on the uptake. Could have given them a bit of a ward save there and negated some of that damage. Beautiful charge though, coming in on the flank from the Knights of the Blazing Sun, and they're in amongst Berserkers and Skin Wolves. And they might lose that fight when they're 3 against 1, but they'll trade upwards better than most Cav could in that scenario. Wolfric coming over to help turn that even more in the Norscan's favor, but this was not a spell I was expecting. That's really why you should always look and see what a caster brings to the field, but angry tendrils, gnarled tree branches will rip and tear my berserkers apart and destroy a bunch of my beasts of Tashnar and hounds as well. Ice wolves and everything will have to retreat. I was a little bit blobbed up because I didn't think he had anything to punish it, but dwellers below made sure that I realized the depth and gravity of my mistake. That was pretty painful. Now, the Mammoths are just destroying stuff. Soulcrusher has been untouched on this side, and the opening stages of this battle have been amazing for me. I mean, both Wolfric and the Soulcrusher have gotten in on top of the Greatswords, smashed them apart. Already, the infantry grind is going heavily in my favor, and because that's pretty much where he's put all his money, you'd think, like, okay, this is already over. But he has the exact same amount of infantry left that I do. I mean, maybe not after that charge. Oh my god, Soulcrusher, I love you so much. The frosty blue-eyed pachyderm from the far north knows how to pulp foot troops. No question about it. Fighting back-to-back with Wolfric, I mean, they're gonna run over stuff all day long. It's glorious. But if we take a look at the infantry on both sides, I mean, it's actually really even, and that's because the Greatswords off the charge really destroyed a lot of my elite tier stuff. I mean, Marauder champions are pretty much nowhere to be seen. They're heavily depleted. Combat resolution was decided in a flash in those opening engagements. Penumbral Pendulum have to invest some winds of magic just to turn the infantry grind in my favor. Beast of Tashnar charge and the Ice Wolves might be able to rout off those remaining Imperial Greatswords, with the War Wagon and the grenade launchers are still firing in and causing a lot more havoc than I would have expected. Knights of the Blazing Sun got a beautiful charge into the remainder of those Icehorn Marauders. The Mammoths will have to stop over to try to push back the tides of the Imperial forces. Skin Wolves, most of their models are still alive. They're moving around, but the Empire Captain is beasting it up in the center, killing off a bunch of Berserkers, and that hold the line mechanic he brings to bear, that +5 melee defense and I think +4 leadership, might not seem like it did a whole lot, but if you think about what they were actually facing with the charge from the Berserkers and the charge from the Mumakil, the fact that they were able to deal all that damage to my front line, I think a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that he brought this Empire Captain, which is kind of a strange pick, but it actually has helped him out a lot, and it's helping him win the infantry grind, because actually, the Imperials have more infantry on the field now than I do. The rest of my Berserkers, the rest of my Marauder champions, they're all gone. They're all routed. Skin Wolves and the rest of the monsters are piling in. This is what Norsca is pretty good at, but Wolfric is down past half HP now. The War Wagon is actually a big reason why Soulcrusher and the Mammoth are both taking a decent amount of damage. Their single target DPS isn't incredible by any means. There are better options for sure, but it's kind of been able to sit back and just plunk away. Already used half its ammunition and done a pretty good job of its duty so far. Duty. I said duty. Berserkers and Spearmen fighting, and I think the Berserkers will rout as the Jade Wizard charges in from the flank. Imperial Pegasus will see them off. The Archlector is routing, but remember, he's got Earthblood, so he could get him back into the fight if he's able to go over there. Melkos going down on the Grenade Launcher Outriders, and the War Wagon plunking away. Only have 50 speed, so they are not incredibly mobile, and I actually think War Mammoths are faster. I think they're 56 speed, but if they don't get in charge range, I don't think they can easily catch up to them. The speed differential is pretty minimal. Oh my god, that is why you bring Mammoths, man. Does it get more satisfying than that? Oh! Punch and counterpunch, though. Knights of the Blazing Sun coming in from behind, and that charge just killed 8 or 9 Skin Wolf models. They were low in health, but they had all their models, so they could have regen a bunch of that. And that charge from the Knights of the Blazing Sun, from the Knights of Myrmidia, with those blazing lances, and that 22% weakness to fire from those Skin Wolves, or I guess 22% bonus damage against Skin Wolves, enough to almost completely shatter them, take them down to 5 models, and they shattered, but they broke the Skin Wolves and killed off a lot of their number there. Empire Captain is left isolated now. No help, no support for him except for the War Wagon firing in. Fimir Balefiend gotta give him the Barney tail thwap and smash a few Empire State troops in the ass. They'll go running for the hills. The Empire Captain is dead. I mean, he's not gonna be able to escape from this. Definitely not. That's a mammoth gangbang of gigantic proportions, and it will be the end of a brave soul who did all he could to keep the Empire in this game, and they are still in it, because both Mammoths are getting super low, and they're getting chunked down surprisingly well from the War Wagon and from the Outrider grenade launchers, which you really don't think of having high single target DPS, but they've just kind of been able to sit back and shoot and fire this whole game. And because the Skin Wolves and the Beasts of Tashnar had their hands full dealing with those Knights of Myrmidia, I mean, I wasn't able to shut them down, so they're still firing in, and now I have nothing to catch them. So at this point, it's really a question of whose bar depletes first, the ammunition bar for the Imperials or the health bar for Norsca. Now, obviously, War Mammoths have a ton of health. Thankfully, they are HP sinks. They can take the brunt of quite a lot of this, and Milkand's Mystifying Miasma certainly helping out get rid of those grenade launchers who did have some ammunition left. So even though, again, they're not great against single targets, War Mammoths have such a large hitbox, they don't end up missing many volleys, and they were wrecking Wolfric pretty bad. But the Fimir Balefiend should be able to see them off. One more Melkoth to ensure they do not return, doing about 500 to 600 damage each time, slowing them down, letting the Fimir Balefiend get closer to cause a little bit of fear. But Wolfric is super low, and yeah, that Arch-Lector and some state troops are hiding in the woods, and they did return. And the War Wagon is not out of ammunition. So he's got one job, which will be made harder by the fact that he's only moving at 50 speed. So Wolfric, when he pops Foe Seeker, can almost catch up. And in fact, I think, yeah, he just did. He just did catch up. But a magic missile from the Jade Wizard, bringing in that bound spell, that scroll, that fireball, just sent Wolfric over the edge, and he's routing. And I have no way to protect him. If I had my Skin Wolves back there, maybe I could kill the Jade Wizard if he decided to land, but they're nowhere to be seen. And Wolfric's just getting chased off the map. There are two models that just returned over on the other side of the battlefield, but they're useless at this point. 600 HP, only two models left. The War Wagon is out of ammunition. Now they're charging in with the Arch-Lector, dropping Enfeebling Foe from the Fimir Balefiend, and Grand Shield of Faith. The ward save is not going to save you, buddy. Grand Soulfire plops down, but the Imperial State Troops, they cannot hold the line at this point. Soulcrusher is too much. War Wagon not going to be able to do anything in melee, and now it's all up to the Jade Wizard, and a Jade Wizard taking down a Mammoth is a joke. He's got too much HP left, too much health. It is going to go the way of Norsca and the Fimir Balefiend, but I must say, I was surprised given how the opening stages of that battle went, how depleted my army became. Wolfric and Soulcrusher both got whittled down quite a bit considering the overall lack of range DPS you would expect the Empire to have there. In terms of the build he brought with the great swords and the fact that he only brought the War Wagon and the Outrider grenade launchers for any range DPS whatsoever. So yeah, Fimir Balefiend and the Mammoth are going to goon up on the Jade Wizard, and this will be the end of the battle. But I must say, when I started that game, I was licking my chops. I saw all those great swords, I saw all the infantry, I said, wow, the Mammoths are going to have a field day. And they did. They each got well over 100 kills. I believe Soulcrusher settled around 180, which is just incredibly fun. I'm not sure I've gotten that many kills with a Mammoth in quite a long time. One of my favorite units. I absolutely adore them. Such a cool linchpin, centerpiece DLC unit for Norsca. Amazing to see them in action. And they did great for me. But the Imperial build, certainly experimental, certainly not try-hard, not meta in any way, shape, or form. But it was interesting to see that counterplay, right? So the Imperial build was one that was meant to target a wide infantry-focused build for Norsca, which you can often expect to see because people don't necessarily want to bring a lot of large targets against the Empire because of their halberds, their spears, their cheap guns, their huntsmen, their cannon fire, their demigryph knights. And so if you go heavy on the Greatsword play, you can actually expect to win the infantry grind heavily, and I think that's what he was going for there with the Silver Chevron Greatswords. I mean, he wrecked my infantry so fast. Even Marauder Champions and Berserkers stood no chance in that fight whatsoever and didn't end up making a very large impact at all. But because I went into Mammoths expecting to see the Greatswords, expecting to see him try to counter my infantry grind, I ended up bringing a build that ended up being just enough to push me over the edge and run over the Knights of the Blazing Sun and the Greatswords. But it ended up being way closer than I expected initially. I saw his build and said, okay, I'm going to run you over. I'm going to straight up bulldoze you. And I really didn't. I ended up with about 8,000 HP left combined between a Soulcrusher and Famir Balefine. That's the HP bar of about 1.5 units remaining. Not even that, really. So, ended up being pretty close. Pretty exciting game. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. There'll be plenty more content coming very soon, and I'll see you all in the next video. Any Pride, signing out for now.